What's going on, family? This is your host, John, aka J David, and you are tuned into another episode of the Cavalier Convos podcast. And tonight, man, I got a few of my brothers here with me. We got Kenny in the building. What's good, brother? How you doing? Reggie, what's going on, brother? How you doing? Dwayne, what's going on? How y'all doing?
What's good?
What's up? So we are doing another podcast via Zoom. Hopefully, soon we'll be able to get back into the podcast studio. But today we got a few things we had to cover today, being there's a lot going on in society in general, Black society. To our listeners, most definitely appreciate y'all tuning in. It's been a lot of the feedback I've been getting and all of us have been getting has been very, very positive for the most part. Make sure if you guys not done this already, go back, listen to some of our previous episodes via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, check us out on Instagram, Facebook. You know what I mean? All you got to do is search Cavalier Convos. Go ahead and just type that and we'll come up. So most definitely do that, y'all. So for today's topic, man, there's a lot going on. I think as Black people, we are often looked at as the moral compass of American society. I think we are probably expected to conduct ourselves in an unrealistic manner and expected to sacrifice a lot for the benefit of a lot of other people, but not in the benefit of our own community. So we're going to be talking about some different things in regards to the current climate out in the streets with these police killings, these police brutality, the offensive rhetoric coming from all sides of government, the left, the right, the middle, CNN, Fox News, who else, does it matter at this point? Just a lot going on. So I guess the first thing, man, how are y'all fellas doing? Kind of give us some opinions, man. I'll start out with Reggie. Give us some opinions on the events that are taking place between my brother who just got murdered in Minnesota, and then my sister down south as well. Like, we can name names, but everybody, it's the same story. It's the same game, same story.
It's frustrating, man. It creates a lot of anger. It creates, for me personally, it's a trigger. You start thinking about situations in your own life that could have gone that far south. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've always been the perfect driver, right? I do remember a situation in which I had to encounter being pulled over, and it was uncomfortable. And you wonder if it was truly about a moving violation or about where you were at the time you were there. So you look at all these situations, whether it's pulling over a vehicle, somebody jogging down the street, somebody sitting in their own home, watching television, eating ice cream, however you phrase it. At the end of the day, man, it's frustrating. It's aggravating. It creates a lot of anger. And I'm trying to remind myself to remain a solution-based thinker in a time like this. And also, listen, I think one of the most dangerous things that some people can do is hold someone to a standard that they don't know they're being held to. And what I mean by that is, some people are expecting other people to do this long list of things to prove that they understand it. Well, here's the reality. They don't. Like most people, until you've experienced certain things, it's hard to understand. I'm not absolving, or I'm not saying they shouldn't care. But what I'm saying is it is really hard. And I'll use me as an example, as a Black man, I can't expect somebody to do something and then tell them that what they chose to do is not what I wanted them to do, therefore not good enough. And so I think as we watch this evolve, I think the first thing we have to do is remind ourselves how we feel and control our anger, our frustration, and then not expect somebody to do something that we don't know to do. And what I mean by that is if somebody feels as though they got to go kick in a window, while I don't agree with that, I'm not going to sit there and tell them, you need to do what I'm doing. I don't know how your emotions work. I'm not you. And so I think that's some of the first things that we need to do is compartmentalize and understand for ourselves what we're feeling and then come up with our own reactions instead of like Kenny, and I'm going to bring this to you. I can't expect you to react the exact same way I am. You haven't been through everything that I've been through and the same circumstances of those situations. The first thing we have to do is understand that whether it's myself, whether it's Kenny, whether it's Dwayne, whether it's John, we're all angry and frustrated and dealing with these things and these triggers, but we can't expect each other to do the same exact thing that the other one's doing because it hits us different. That's kind of the first thing I think that we need to do is understand that our other brothers and sisters are not going to react exactly as if we would.
Yeah, I think that's very accurately said, brother. Kenny, man, you could kind of go ahead, bro, and kind of, I know we talked about went in on the last episode, but kind of give a short, I guess, rundown, man.
Well, it goes without saying that we're frustrated, angry, sad, and worried. Not a lot of hope. The one thing that I've thought about a lot is this reaction and everything that we see right now is basically straight out of the playbook. And what we're lacking, there's a couple of things that we're lacking. One, no real actionable items to actually act on. Like we talk about action, but we don't necessarily have a real intelligent plan where we would actually see change. And in terms of what's actually going on now with civil unrest, and as many times as we've seen it, if you look at any revolt or any rebellion in the history of this country that actually changed the status quo because of it, they were all led by somebody. And we absolutely don't have that leadership now in terms of civil unrest. So what we see people doing in the streets right now, not just the protesting, but, you know, yeah, everything else. We don't have anyone that's actually leading it. This is just our visceral reaction and pretty much what's in the playbook. And we keep missing that those that are offending us, we're not doing anything that they don't expect. They've gotten, in terms of anyone who would be sort of affected by this, like they've gotten through each and every time we've rioted, we've looted, we've protested. They've gotten through each one of those and nothing has actually changed. So as many times as we can say it, we need to actually think about what kind of actionable items are there that we can actually start moving on and actually making change. And I don't think that so far that we've gotten that. And I don't think that a lot of people are really thinking in perspective where, in terms of what we're actually up against. So that has been on my mind heavily over the past few days. What can we do?
Yeah, I agree, bro. Dwayne, we went in, you was on the last one, we went in a lot too, but I guess kind of just give a little short rundown, man, just kind of where your mind is at right now.
I look at what's going on right now. It made me think back to 1992. If y'all don't remember 1992, that's the Rodney King beating. When everybody saw it on live, cops beat them up with the billy clubs and everything. And there was a lot of looting, rioting, and everything going on. But you notice how everybody came together after that situation. And I look at it right now, how everybody's come together again. It's like history repeating itself. We had come together for a minute, then 2 months down the road, we all start getting back to the norm, start separating, start doing the normal thing. We all right now, everybody's hot, pissed, mad. You know, everybody want to react. But 2 months down the line, are you going to still be doing the same thing? That's my thing. We can't just start something and don't ever finish it. And I think that's our problem. We'll start something, but we don't see it all the way through. After 2 months down the line, everybody just go back to normal, just forget about it, and then wait till something else happen, then we all back at it again. So I look at it like, if we're going to start something, let's keep going through it. Don't just wait. Just like, okay, after 2 months, we're like, all right, we're going back to normal, nothing's going to change. Things change. You got to look at history of itself. As Blacks, we have came a long way from, definitely a long way. I'm never going to say nothing's going to never change because things don't change overnight. So it's going to take time. It might not be our generation, it might be our kids' generation when something else might change. So we just got to keep going. And eventually things are just going to get better and better. It's not going to get better overnight, but I just look at things like that's going on that we got to keep doing what we're doing. Don't wait. Like I say, 1992, Rodney King, everybody was looting, rioting, and everything. But then you notice how the Bloods and Crips came together during that time. So when certain situations, things like that, it don't always just come together when it's something going on. It just always be together. You know, that's my thing. We just need to start staying together.
Yeah, man. I most definitely agree. Yeah, to Kenny, your point, man, I think in regards to the initial response, man, is going to be the initial response. Also, man, there's like a lot that's going on. When I'm watching some of these different protests and riots and all these different things, it's not just black people I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a lot of white people. I'm seeing a lot of Hispanic people looting. I'm seeing a lot of videos. Like the thing is different. Like media is associating a lot of stuff with just black people because initially what we're seeing is being associated with the police brutality responses, right? To the response to the police brutality. But there's a lot of other things that are factored into what's happening right now. Record unemployment right now. Record unemployment in America. At least 50 million people jobless. That's just reported. We don't know how many that are actually not able to get through to unemployment and different things like that. 50 million people unemployed. Half of small businesses are going to be shut down permanently. People back on mortgages. People are back on rent, bills. You have a massive debt crisis in this country. You have people who still haven't got stimulus checks. There is a lot of angry people, and it's not just black people out there. I saw a video today of 10 white people whooping the cops' ass last night. 10 white people. They're not angry about no police brutality. I'm telling you right now, they're angry about some other things. So you're seeing like a mass, like, it's like the conscious and the unconscious are out there. And there's a lot of unconscious people out there as well. To be honest, what I watched yesterday is nothing, it's so far removed from originally what it was supposed to be, like what's being actually protested. It's a lot of different things that are involved in this.
As a man, we take a lot of stuff in. Being a man, we take a lot of stuff, then eventually we explode. So what's going on in America right now? Like you say, you see whites, Hispanic. During this pandemic and everything that's going on, everybody going through a lot of hard times. So even though it's not just about the murder just recently happened, it's a lot of stuff that's built up inside of everybody that now they get to the point they ready to explode. So all of it is tying in together. And I understand it's not all about what the purpose is supposed to be the protest for, but it's everything that's building up. 2020 started, people starting to realize how things were so different. It started, especially with this coronavirus, it kind of changed a lot of people's lives. Then you got both the incident down in Georgia, then you had the incident in Minnesota, you had the incident in New York, so all these stuff is just piling up and it's starting to build. And not just black folks are upset, white folks are getting upset because some of that stuff they looking at like, now you're making me look bad. Even though he's a white guy that killed a black guy or whatever, now you're making me look bad too. So that's why you starting to see, even on the protest, you see white folks out there with blacks. In Flint, Michigan, the police officer took their helmets off and threw their billy clubs down and walked with all the people on a protest. So stuff like that, they letting you know, like, hey, we not all bad. I'm with you on this. And like I say, it's just a lot of stuff just build up. So everybody's now reacting, especially like you say, unemployment. People trying to take care of their families. It's being at the bank. We got people coming to all the time. Like they panicking about paying this, paying their mortgage. I see it on a regular. So it's just stuff that's everybody's starting to build up and people are ready to just let it go. The first reaction is the lunch, fight, or whatever.
John, I think you just said something that kind of ties in a lot of what both Reggie and Dwayne was saying. Clearly, with how COVID-19 has kind of displaced so many people, I do think that a lot of people just got time today. And we're going to accept it. Like if you're really going to be out here and you're going to express your anger and all of this other stuff, it's like, all right, good. But here's the thing, like Dwayne just said, there's follow-up and seeing things all the way through. So let's just think about this, regardless of how we feel about protesting or regardless of how we feel about rioting and looting and all this other stuff. What if this went on for literally consistently for a whole month? At that point, what would have to be done in order to get it to stop, considering at that point there isn't a foreseeable end to the civil unrest? Now, that has not happened. Every time anybody gets up and gets mad, you start screaming for a little while, and then at some point it dies down until the same shit happens again. But what if, especially when folks clearly got time today, because they're not at work and they're already angry, so they've got energy and time. What if this went on for literally like a whole another month consistently? Would something change? Like, change in the way that we would need it to change? Just realistically, I'm asking what y'all actually think. I mean, I don't know, but I'm curious to see what you would think is if this went on for literally a month.
Not that, and I don't want to change directions on that because I think that's an interesting premise. I also think that to the points that you both made about the timing of this, we've had multiple of these situations between essentially the top of the year, as we head into June, right? 5 months of the year, we've had Minneapolis, Louisville, Georgia. We've had in a very tight vacuum when everybody is at home. So you talk about the magnification, because I think part of what we're seeing in terms of the reaction and the visceral reaction amongst so many different things, amongst so many different communities, is because generally when these things have happened, a lot of people have just kind of been like, oh yeah, that's happening in that city, but I'm going to work today. That's not the case right now. There is no, but I'm going to work today. It's on every TV station. And of course, the media, and I would know this because I work in the media realizes they have more eyeballs now than they probably have had in the last 2 or 3 years. And so that's adding to the mushroom cloud, if you will, of visceral reaction across the country. And the other thing I wanted to point out real quick is that, and I made the point about people's reaction. And I've seen a lot of people that look like us have different opinions on what should happen, what some reactions should be, or how aggressive some reactions are. And they're saying, don't protest this, or don't loot, don't riot, this, that, and the third. And listen, we all understand everybody's angry, but I'll just say it this way. That doesn't mean because they disagree with how we should react, don't create an additional divide because of that. Because the other thing that I notice is happening and happens every time, right? To Kenny's point, the playbook, right? Is part of the playbook is people are divided on what people's reaction should be. And then that creates additional rifts. Some people are mad at peaceful protesters for being peaceful. Peaceful protesters are mad at aggressive, quote, non-peaceful protesters because they're being aggressive and non-peaceful. And then other people are mad at people because they're doing neither. Other people are mad at other people because they're doing both. And what ends up happening is you've got all these people that per se support the overall mission, but even those that are supporting the overall mission are divided about how to get there. If that continues, the progress will continue to be stymied. Back to the point that was made earlier about the playbook. And then what are we doing to keep the movement going forward? To your point, Dwayne, because of the inability to find a common process for everybody to get behind and drive that point home to spearhead the change that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's like, I don't think I have to say anything. That's really well said, man. I think what I'm seeing now, right, in regards to just the reaction. So like, you CNN, you got them, they got their joint tore up. And I think like certain things, like when I see certain things, to be honest, it's kind of like the people at the grassroots know certain things and they have certain feelings. And when your voice isn't heard, oftentimes your reaction, it may seem random or it may seem irrational, but I think them going to CNN building, tearing that sign apart has a lot of significance. I will say that in regards to this. I think because what we have, and I look through social media, you got people tweeting, politicians tweeting, a lot of black celebrities tweeting, this isn't the way, or this, that, and the third. We got to be civil, all this other things that kind of like these, just like parrots repeating just like a given script. Like, and it's very easy for a lot of these people to tell us like, oh, we should, let the justice system do its course or whatever, or why y'all rioting in Atlanta? That's in Wisconsin, or that's in Minnesota, or that's in LA, or like weird things like that, like T.I. and Killer Mike said. Even though I respect those brothers, but it's also to think about this, like all of what we're seeing are reactions, not just to this. You got to think about all the other black men and women who died at the police's hands, who are unarmed and unthreatening.
Well, that's why I made the point about triggers, because some of this is people being triggered and then having to remember things that they've gone through themselves.
Yeah.
That's the big piece of this that I think a lot of people are missing.
No, that's very true. And my thing is like, all right, well, after this, right? My thing is like, all right, well, after this, right? Because what's going to happen is they're going to utilize the media and the politicians and different people in place are going to use this as an opportunity to appeal to black people, also an opportunity to reprimand. I hear the Atlanta, what's her name? Forgot her name. Whatever, Keisha Bottoms.
Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Yeah, like talking to us or talking to black people like they're children. And this is a problem I have with a lot of black politicians, man, is that when white people go out and riot and loot, or when other groups go out and do things and act a fool, they don't talk. They don't talk to those other groups like that. They don't talk to them like that. They don't have that same vitriol. Something else to think about. Joe Biden, the arrogance. This was last week. The arrogance of the man to tell us that if we don't vote for him, we ain't black. Like just expecting black people just to give you like, oh, y'all niggas are supposed to vote for me because y'all black. I don't have to promise you anything. I don't have to do anything for you. I don't have to make any changes to the criminal justice system that I constructed, if we're going to be honest. And we're going to talk about crime bills, and we're going to talk about mass incarceration and 3 strikes laws and all these other different things. I don't have to promise you. I don't have to make amends for any of that. Y'all are supposed to vote for me because y'all are black. What do y'all have to say about that?
I just let it go over my head, because sometimes when you hear people say certain things, I just look at it as stupidity and just like, I'm not worried about that. You know what I'm saying? Even though election time come around, we got to vote and everything, but certain things I listen to, and then I know the media is going to make it worse than what it is. So I'm not saying he didn't say it, and I'm not saying, I just look at the media, and we always take stuff and run with it. I'm going to look back into it. I just want to look at it more just to see exactly what was said. That's why I haven't followed up on that that part with,
if you watch it, that's not the worst thing he said.
Well, that's why I never
in the interview earlier in the interview, he said the crime bill didn't increase mass incarceration.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not
saying you disagree. No, I'm saying that it's important because the black people oftentimes, like, we have this idea, right? And this is what I want to get into, that you're automatically, because you're black, you have to vote Democrat. If you don't vote Democrat, you're Republican. My thing is, like, for black people, how do you have a legitimate democracy in a 2-party system when you have two, like, democracy, like, understand, like, freedom, people choose. When you have 2 choices, or 2 ideologies, a democracy should function like this. Well, we got, instead of 2 candidates, we should have 5 or 10 candidates we vote for president. Instead of having an election and just voting for one person to make decisions for us, no, we vote for the decisions independently. Because this is another thing important black people don't understand when they talk about voting and things like that. The word democracy is not in the Constitution at all. It's not in the preamble. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the Republic. A republic is what we live in. We don't live in a democracy. We don't have freedom to just choose and move around and make decisions. That's not what we have. So, like, and Kenny, you made a point to the numbers. Our vote does have currency in a sense because the Democrats need black people in order to gain seats, in order to gain presidency. They won't win without the black vote. The thing is that because the Republicans they don't cater to it. But the thing when it comes to that is that if they needed our vote so bad, we need to actually, like you said before, what comes after this? Making demands, having a plan of action, having items that we need in order for your vote, for us to give you our vote. The thing is like, all right, well, do politicians take black people for granted is what I'm asking.
I'll put it this way. I think a lot of politicians at the top, and what I mean by the top are presidential candidates, vice presidential folks, those type of people, they take everybody for granted because they can. Because the reality is a lot of people miss on where everything is controlled. You just talked about Joe Biden's history in terms of crime bills, right? Joe Biden didn't do that when he was the vice president. Joe Biden did that when he was a senator. But a lot of people were not paying attention to who the hell their senator was when Joe Biden was a senator. That's the problem. Okay, so some of this, yes, is systemic and organized and orchestrated by politicians. But some of this is on people to be aware of what they're doing, the decisions they're making. Because I can tell you right now, if we went out and did a straw poll, most people can tell you the last 3 elections, both presidential candidates. But what I bet you what they can't tell you, they can't tell you who their city council person is. They can't tell you who their county commission person is that represents their district. They can't tell you who the U.S. representative is that's part of their state that is in D.C. every week. That's part of the problem. And I'm not trying to deflect, but the reality is some of it is incumbent upon us to educate ourselves. And when I say us, I'm not talking about just black people. I'm talking about citizens, period. To educate ourselves to know why we are voting, when we should vote, and how important all of these elections are. Because a lot of people say it all the time. I only vote in a presidential election. Well, guess what?
That's stupid.
The current president, he's getting bills, right? People don't understand this. The very stimulus legislation that just went through less than 2 months ago.
Yeah, it's proposed by
that
Senate.
Came through the Senate and the House. It has to. That's when I get frustrated, is because you just made the point about people's history. The problem is by the time a lot of people know who they are, they have no clue what their history is.
They have no clue. They have no clue. And that's my thing important. My thing is important is also like, I don't tell people to vote. I don't tell people not to vote. I tell people to vote for their interests. Black people never, in my short time, on this earth, I don't hear black people actually voting for their interests. It's always some type of symbolic, some type of gestural. It's never anything specific and tangible. I'll give you an example. LGBT community. When politicians come to them, there are tangible items that get presented to them or they present to the politicians in exchange for their support. Latinos, undocumented immigrants, things like that, specifics, tangible. Now I'm going to build a library or a basketball court, or I'm going to name this fund after Martin Luther King, these kind of different symbolic gestures to play to our emotions. Black people, let's be honest, economically, everything is about economics. So like when politicians come to black people for votes, we need to have tangible policies in place. And that's when it comes to organizing, because we do not do a good job organizing. I don't care if the politician is black, white, Hispanic, brown, yellow, clear, red, purple. I don't care what color he is. I don't care if he's a Klansman. I do not care. But if he brings some tangible items to me that's going to improve the community and I can measure it, statistically measure these things, you got my vote. You got my vote. But the problem is we get a lot of lip service and we get a lot of smooth talk. And when we get that smooth talk, it appeals to our emotions, because for us, a lot of black people, we've been so used to just people hating us and not being left out that the minute we hear someone talk nice to us, that's all it takes. And I think as a community, we should not have friends We have business associates, we have business partners when it comes to politics, but we shouldn't have any blind loyalty to any politician, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're from any race, any group. I don't care, because running the treadmill, people always associate me that I say I'm against voting. I'm not against voting. I'm against voting without a purpose and a plan.
So when it comes to like how people are voting, right? And, you know, the so-called two-party system, the parties are really just about resources. Even outside of like ideology, in this country, we always require categories because people are too lazy to do the work to actually get to know something. So we have to put stuff in categories, right? And as far as
system of boxes, society of boxes.
So as far as being a Democrat or a Republican, it's just a way for somebody to be able to assume what your ideals are. However, that's not necessarily the case when it comes to either one of those parties, because you always have the opportunity to be an independent. But the reason that people are typically not independent is because the power in the government is behind specifically two separate, or not even necessarily separate, but two different ideologies. But you always have a choice. Now, and Reggie, I'm glad you brought this up. Too many people are putting their faith in a national figurehead, when in reality, the best that person can do is exercise an opinion on a platform that the whole world can hear. But outside of that, they cannot tell you or me or anybody else what to actually do, because that's what our local officials are for. Starting from city, county, then even when you talk about on the state level, there are not enough people that are focusing on where things actually happen. Now, to the point y'all were talking about, is the black vote taken for granted? And I was talking about how the black vote doesn't really have a lot of currency except for on the local level. To be honest, that's really just how it is. So Reggie, like you're right, pretty much everyone's vote is, for the most part, is being taken for granted because this is a popularity contest and you need to win however you can win. So you're going to say this to this group, you're going to say this to this group, you're going to say this to this group. At the end of the day, you have an agenda and you have people that are behind you where you serve as the figurehead for this specific agenda. But we keep putting it on the president when it's not the president, it's a whole group of people. Like there's a whole slew of people that have a particular belief, that have a particular belief in what should be done in this administration. And that's what this presidential candidate is essentially going to be trying to do, is to express these views while they do all the work in the background. And we're focused on the joker in the front. It's sleight of hand.
I got a recommendation for black people, for the black community. And to what you're saying, Kenny, in regards to the numbers, yeah, Dr. Claude Anderson, somebody that I pay very close attention to, says black people in this country are outnumbered 10-1. He said, your focus is solely on voting. That is a wrong thing to be focused on. He said, you need to get you some businesses. You need to get you some economic power. And any politician that comes to you asking for anything, you buy them or you lease them. Only thing politicians understand and respond to is who paid for me to be up here to be able to talk to all these people. Why do you think all these corporations got bailouts?
So what is your money going to do?
Black people got to make their money work. We got to make our money work for us. That's the difference between us and the Jews and the Asians and actually the LGBT, because a lot of the LGBT community and also the Jewish community, Hollywood, they get that major funding, major backing. So when they need to push legislation and get things done, they got the money to do it because they got the finances to do it. So they don't care because, to be honest, like, let's be honest, the LGBT community is not like a large masses of group. Like, it's a very small minority actually compared to the rest of the country, but they get a lot of things done because of the money and the finances that they have to do things.
So money talks, bullshit walk.
Well, dealing with the politics, even though everybody knows this is election year, and with everything that's going on, everybody should realize it should be an agenda. Even with the protests, with politicians, you got to have an agenda. Like we got the protests. What's our agenda? What we want? I understand enough is enough. We know we want all to stop the police brutality, but what is our agenda? The same thing when we're going to vote. What is your agenda? What do you want this person to do? What do we want from starting from the locals, politicians, the representatives, and everything? What we want from them, because everything goes uphill. That's why they say on top of the hill, because everything is up there. So everything comes from the bottom and goes up. So we all got to come up with an agenda. There got to be an agenda that what do we want? What do we want accomplished? Everything you want, because nobody gets everything they want. It's not going to happen that way. Everybody's not going to get pleased. But the thing is, you got to see some kind of progress. So if we have an agenda saying, hey, go to your representatives, say, this is what I want. This is what we need to start happening. This is what I need. If y'all want to say, start with the police department, this is what I need y'all to do. They need to have some kind of class all dealing with all the race and everything, color. They need to have some kind of, I say, equal opportunity class. Basically, that's what it is. They need to have a class. So if you have someone that's got any little suspect of being racist, or it could be black or white or Hispanic or anything, they need to either let them go or they need to find something else to do. So that's why I say everything, we got to have agenda for everything, even with the politics and everything. Go ahead.
So you hit it on the head, like, and most of the time we actually lack a real agenda. It'll still end up being super specific.
I don't
But
think
here's
it's
the thing.
Kenny, to what you're saying though, quickly, it's the political education. Understand actually what moves politics and what gets things actually working in your favor. We are focused on the wrong things that get things working in our favor.
But even beyond that, though, what motivations do any of these politicians have to do what we need them to do? And to be honest, there's not a whole lot of motivation outside of votes on a local level. Because on a federal level, in terms of a presidential election, we don't really matter. We're 13.5% of the whole population, and we're concentrated in different areas. And in those concentrations, our vote is worth way more because we are the majority in those places, and everywhere else we're not. But even beyond that, we have an agenda. Let's say that we got our shit together, and we have an agenda. We know what we want. We know what we need. It ain't stupid. Like, this is for real. What motivations do any of these politicians have to actually act on those things? But we don't. Exactly. And we don't have that. But there's a big reason why we don't have the moolah, the cash, the money, or whatever. There's a big reason, because they don't want us to.
Yeah, because they don't want us to.
They do not want us to have any power. They do not want us to have any power. I said this yesterday somewhere else. Like, slavery is not over. Like, quit playing yourself. It's not. Slavery is not over. And as much money as 1 or 2 or 3 or 10% of the people can have, and you see this huge disparity of the people that don't, even those people can't do what they want to do. You have the few that made it. You have the few that are successful, quote unquote, and whatnot. However, once you spoon feed people enough to make them think that they're actually doing something, they're going to start to move in a direction you absolutely need them to. So all of the stuff that you're doing to them, like, you can't see it because they've thrown a few checks your way. They've thrown a few promotions your way, or they've made a few people success, or allowed a few people to be successful. Because we talked about this yesterday in terms of hard work and all the things that we know we should have. Work ethic, all these different things, right? But at the end of the day, there's somebody else who's allowing that stuff that we need to actually work. And then we think it is. For all these people, it doesn't. So at the end of the day, there's no reason for us not to do what we know that we should do. Mm-hmm. But we can act like doing what we're supposed to do will actually get us what we want, because that's not how their system works.
It's a few things. I think for us, and now I'm going to pass the mic to Reggie. I think for us, it's important to, once again, like, a lot of Black people do not understand the game that's being ran and that's being played on Black people. We don't understand the game on a political level, the media, educational. We don't put the pieces together. So we react to the blatant in-your-face racism, but we don't see a lot of the hidden things, right? My thing, and I talk to y'all about this all the time, is that we in Charlotte, for example, we get Charlotte organized. All the Black business owners in Charlotte, all the Black teachers, all the Black, and we focus on, one, building up the economics. We focus on getting the different partnerships as far as business together, getting a piece of resources. That includes land. That includes basically land, because any other resources you're not going to get the resource without the land. And you focus on building industries and building schools and hospitals. And and obviously this is not something that happens overnight, but every group of people has a think tank, except for Black people. Oftentimes the think tank, because a lot of the other people from different groups come from different countries. So it's a lot easier for them, obviously, to have an ideology and a way of thinking and a culture, because they're coming from different cultures where that stuff is already established, and they just come to the United States and establish it here. Little China, right? Little Italy, things like that. Like, we don't have there's a little Haiti in Miami, I think, or something like that. But we don't have like these kind of communities that feed itself. So that's like one of the main things, I think, like before we can start going up and talking to like politicians and demanding certain things, they respect power. Power respects power. So how do Black people empower themselves? The number one way to empower yourself in this country, from my observation, is economically. And Black people have to practice it on a group level. We got to practice on a group level like they did in Tulsa, whatever. And the only thing that you do different that Tulsa didn't do, you have to protect it. You have to be in a position to protect your community like the Jews do. But Reggie, go ahead, bro.
Before I get into another point, I want to make a point about what we all just really mentioned about the political structure, right? What is the first thing somebody says about somebody when they say, oh, this person says they're going to run for office, they're going to make a run for president? What's the first conversation piece about that person? Well, I don't know if they have enough money. I don't know if they've got the cash. That is the first thing that's always said. This part, they're like, oh, I think that's a great candidate. I just don't think they have the cash. And it could be either political party. Prime example, we can take it back. I'm going to throw an independent out there. Ross Perot. Most people didn't think Ross Perot was going to be worth anything, but he had the money. See, Ross had the money. He had that oil money from Texas. And so they was like, well, he got the money. If you have the money, all of a sudden, you're a viable candidate. Bloomberg, same thing.
Bloomberg, how reprehensible he was. But
they said Bloomberg has enough money to write everybody in this country a check. And it would have cost less to do that than what he spent on his campaign. And he didn't even get all the way to the end. He didn't even get to the final debate to try to win the nomination. Come on now.
He was one of the last four people still in it because he had the bread.
Because he had some bread. Yeah. And so I think we can't miss that, because that sticks to the point that Dwayne made. It proves the point that Kenny made as well. And so when you think about it, same thing with you, John, I mean, we all laid it out. It's that simple. It starts with the first question. Now, with all that being said, as we continue to evolve and you look at how to vote, I think the bigger problem is, and it's a point that was already made earlier, is most people go in to vote blind. They memorize a few names and they say, these are the names I'm going to click. Or they memorize a letter, usually an R or D, and they say, I'm going to click all the names with this. I've heard people say things like, they had so many names under such and such category. And I'm like, you do realize there are certain seats, generally local, judges, those types of things. You're not voting for just one judge. There might be 7 different judges you got to vote for. Not everything is pick one person or this person. Certain things have multiple candidates and you can select 2 or 3. Because if you live in a county, you might have multiple county commissioners, you might have multiple city council people, et cetera, et cetera. To a point that was made earlier, we've got to do a better job of educating ourselves on how the entire, right? If we have figured out that to create change, we're going to have to do it via the lawmaking and political structure of this country. You cannot, I don't care what anybody says. And we can use a sport as an example. We can use a different business model as an example. Let me ask y'all this. The programmer that figures out how to build a program that can sustain itself that they don't have to work on it every day, how much money do they get paid compared to the person that has to work on that same thing every day?
It's a big difference, bro.
They have figured it out. And the problem is you have to continue to educate yourself on the things that you need to use to create what you want them to create. I was in the room a while back. There was a doctor in the room and a nurse. They don't work together, but there's a doctor and a nurse in the same room. And the nurse made a comment about what's considered a Schedule 5 narcotic. And she made the point, and the doctor goes, oh, yeah, that just came on the list 6 months ago. The consistent evolving, the consistent adding of knowledge in the brain of how the system is work and what's moving the needle is important. And I think to walk around and talk to so many people, and listen, I'll say it, I know this podcast is not necessarily laid out this way, but that's for everybody. I don't care what they look like. It's a whole lot of people that don't know what the hell they're doing when they walk in a voting booth. Some people don't even know where their district is. There are people that have said to me, such and such congresswoman is an idiot. And I go, interesting. You think that person's an idiot. Do you know you live in that person's district and that person has gotten 90+% of the vote the last 5 election cycles, and that's why they've been in D.C. for 10 years? Who did you vote for? Oh, well, she's such and such party, so I guess I voted. Really?
Yeah, we got a lot.
You don't even know what you're doing. Yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, man. I think, well, we could go into this all night, but I wanted to kind of ask a question to close, right? And I want you to really think hard about this. Take your time. And I'm going to kind of explain, but like, what are some things, or name just one thing that you would like to see Black people advocating for, tangible things that actually affect real change in their community? What are some things that you guys would like to see Black people have on their agenda, political agenda?
Tangibly is putting money properly into education. When I say properly, it prevents kids of any race from being lumped in to schools because of their economic background. Like, you won't need Title I schools because you're not sticking a bunch of kids with the same kind of economic backgrounds, same kind of cultural backgrounds, all in the school together, where they ultimately don't get the same opportunities as a school that could be 3 miles up the road. A lot of that has to do with funding. In response to like starting from the bottom and working up, just where funding for education has typically gone, it has not gone somewhere where it could affect Black people effectively. Some will go here, some will go there. There'll be some that,
you know why, Kenny?
Yeah.
Kenny, and to what you're saying, like, it's never, that's the thing where a lot of these terms that politicians like to use, and a lot of like people of color, minorities, Black and brown, nothing ever is specifically, directly, only specified for Black. And that is the biggest problem in politics. So when you talk about education, it's always, we're going to do things for lower income, right? That's a blanket term that, that'll help a few of you. Well, that'll help Black people too, because most Black people are poor, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like these kind of things. Like, so like, to what you're saying is very true. So I tell Black people pay a lot of attention to the words that these politicians use, because they'll do something for education and it'll be a blanket kind of thing. And we assume because they're talking to us about it, that it's directly for us.
Right. And the reason that I say education, in a roundabout way, we've really sort of keyed on this a lot, is the reason that I say specifically education is because with each generation, there are certain things that get inherently better. And I'm not talking about like opportunity and resources, just talking about what this generation is like able to do in terms of people getting smarter, things that are able to be learned at younger ages versus when we were younger and all these different things, right? Our futures are hinged on our kids' futures and beyond and beyond and beyond. And it's sort of cliche to say that. However, the way that money's been thrown around as far as education has specifically benefited Black people. Maybe some, but not the 13.4% of us, like, at all. There's no reason in a whole school district, if a school district is cutting, if their budget is getting cut, there's no reason for the smaller population of Black people to be the ones that are affected the most because of how funds are allocated and all the different things. So if I'm going to ask for something, I'm going to ask for specific funding that specifically helps Black people in education, specifically.
Oh, we got Dwayne, Reggie, what y'all got, bro?
Oh, I thought Reggie was going. My bad. The thing, when we say we're asking for stuff in particular for Black folks, I can tell you this. It's going to be hard to get something that go directly just straight to Blacks. A lot of time the politicians, they're going to get something. It might not cater to directly Blacks, but they might say, like you say, low-income families. They're going to say they doing that because they not just going to target Blacks. They targeting everybody because they have to. That's just like I always bring up.
I can't say that because they do that they don't ever have that when they talking about Hispanics. You know what I'm saying? They don't do that when they're talking about, you know what I'm saying? Like other groups, I don't give them that runaround.
But Hispanics, not just Mexican now. Hispanics could be Puerto Rican, depending.
No, that's what I'm saying. But Black people, it's not just Black people from America. It's Caribbean, African, different people from different parts of the world that live in this country are Black too as well. So my thing is like specifically for Black, specifically for Latinos, specifically for Asians, specifically for LGBT, specifically for white women, specifically for white men, specifically for business owners or corporations, specifics that specifically go directly to that community or that group of people. It's possible because they do it for other people. They do it for the Native Americans. Think about this. They pay reparations to the Native Americans. They pay reparations directly to the Jews, and we ain't even put them in concentration camps.
Well, Native Americans, they actually took the land from the Native Americans. So that's kind of a way of so-called paying back. They're just like one time they said Black folks got 40 acres and a mule. That was a way of them calling themselves paying us back. So they're going to say, oh, we gave y'all this, we gave y'all that. So what else y'all asking for? My thing, I look at it like, if I get something, if it's not directly towards me, but I do get something, that means it's making progress. I look at it like that. Even when I had soldiers in the military, when I was overseas, certain things I couldn't ask for just for a particular person that was in my unit, my soldiers. I had to ask for everybody. So it had to cater to everybody somehow. And it's hard. I understand you said to give stuff to the LBG, all this stuff like that for the Hispanic community. But think about it. If they give everything like stuff for the Hispanic community, that's not considered just Mexicans. They got Black Dominicans. They got all of them. So they all mixed. That's why I look at it like we can ask for stuff. Like a lot of our Black colleges. A lot of our Black colleges need support. Most of the Black colleges are private Black colleges. They don't have state-funded institutions, a lot of the Black colleges, because they all particularly like Baptist colleges or Methodist colleges or stuff like that. So they don't get a lot of funding. And a lot of those colleges need funding, and some of them colleges had to close down because they wouldn't supply funds. So I would love to see funds go to some of the stuff like that, dealing with, like you say, education. Because I think more important than anything we need is education. We need more funding for education regardless, even especially in a lot of our low-income areas, some of our low-income Black areas. Education is I feel like the most important, really the most important thing that I feel like we should ask for. That's just me. Go ahead, Reggie.
It's interesting because I'm going to say it this way. I'm actually going to flat out agree with you, Kenny, and it comes from this place. Education's always been the great equalizer. And every time the minority community, specifically the Black community, as we're talking about it here, catches up, the standard changes. Remember years ago, 30, 40 years ago, if you had a bachelor's degree, you had the Holy Grail. So then all of a sudden, a lot of us started finding ways to get to college, get through college and make it work. Then it changed. Now you needed an advanced degree. Then all of a sudden, a lot of black folks started getting MBAs, started getting master's degrees, and then they was like, well, wait a minute, we got to change something. And the way they've started to undercut that is minimize a lot of the schools at a lower level, to Kenny's point, at a lower level, a local school district, Title I school, why do I have any title school in the same district? It's the same district, to Kenny's point. They should get equal amount of funding. And if it ain't enough, then there's a bigger problem because it's the same pool of tax money. So cut them checks equally. So to that point, I have to say it's education because it's the great equalizer. Because every time that race gets close, every time that carrot, you're about to grab the carrot, somebody come pick it up and move it further down the street. And so to Kenny's point, it starts with education because it's been the great equalizer. And every time that race gets close, all of a sudden the distance of the race changes. You know, you start out the race. We started out the race 70, 80, 100 years ago, whatever, however far back you want to go. It was a race that was scheduled for a mile. Now, all of a sudden, that's a 3.5 mile race. Well, you've been training people to be sprinters. You've been training them to pass a state test. All you got to do is pass a state test. You don't have to remember the information. Just pass a state test. And then all of a sudden, by the time you get done with high school and it's time to go to college, there is no retention there because you just been passing the state test. So that starts to whittle down the amount of people that can finish the race from an education standpoint because the foundation, right? They didn't have good track shoes. They didn't have blocks that worked. They didn't have warm-up suits to get loose with. Their baton was paper and it started raining. All of a sudden, all of these things don't fit. And that's how you get behind in the race. So it has to start with education. I agree with you on that, Kenny.
Well, you can tell you from Memphis.
Oh, yeah, I'm country, baby.
So one thing that I wanted to sort of bring up just as a perspective, there's a lot that we need to change in this country. And the one reason that it doesn't really change for us is value.
We got to get on the same page with that.
We have to create enough value in us where we can't be denied. Like we talked about how ultimately when you're doing a lot of really good things and you become successful, there is still somebody else who's actually benefiting from it. So your success is allowed because this person or this entity is benefiting from it. If they weren't, they're not going to actually allow you to be successful. But if we figure out a way to create so much value, meaning that you cannot do without this, everything will change. Because now that essentially gives us power because you need it. Like they don't need us right now. They needed us when they needed us as slaves, but at the time we were property. And we're no longer property anymore. So they'll do everything they can to make sure that we don't become needed. Because if we become needed, now they have to depend on us, they're going to have a problem. Because right now they don't, and they haven't for a very long time. That's how everything works. If you create value, you create a need for yourself. And therefore, every party that needs you is for you. They're not going to do anything to get rid of that. And at the time something else becomes more valuable, you're good until something else becomes more valuable. And we haven't managed to do that. And I can't really sit here and say what we could do to create that value, because to be honest, I don't think that you can create that here unless there was some kind of regime change or we took the fuck over.
Well, to your point, in order to create value, you have to produce. Black people
change.
are only people before change is like, these are like, and I get what y'all are saying, but these are like these kind of like terms that politicians like to throw around at us, like, because like we got to change or we got to do better or we got to work harder or we got to do this or we got to be better or improve our morality or whatever stuff. Black people are the most moral people in this country by far. We are the most moral. We are the most patriotic. I said this already, right? Black people are the only people in this country who do not produce anything. What I mean by produce anything is that we got a lot of people throwing footballs. We got a lot of people making rap music. I mean, that's one of the biggest exports in this country, so I can say that, but we don't own none of the record labels or any of the production of it. Like, we actually like make the music, but we're not in control of the export of it. So like what Black people need to do, right, is be producers. We need industries, right? So my two things when it comes to what do Black people need and what should Black people be asking for? One of these two things, if not both. First of all, any police officer who who kills a unarmed Black person needs to go to jail, minimum 25 to life sentence. All right, that's one. The other thing is Black people need access to capital. Just like everybody else could come here and get business loans to open up 10 gas stations and 5 bodegas and all these other grocery stores and do all this other things. Black people need specifically grants, loans for businesses that they can create where we control the economy in our own. Because if we don't produce nothing, you don't have a community. One of those two things. I'd like both, but I'll take, at least if you get the police from stop killing us, just leave us the hell alone and we'll we could produce on our own. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you don't stand in our way and have the police run around our neighborhood like a bunch of Gestapo, SS soldiers from the Third Reich of Germany, that would make life better for me. But hey, give me both or give me one of those to start. That's the start. That would be a 2020, 2024 kind of platform. But those would be the main things I'm looking for, because if we don't produce anything, we have no value to what you're saying, Kenny. If we don't have anything, we don't have any independent businesses, industries, we're not valuable. It's just the truth. Why do Asians not get their heads hit over by cops? Because China produces all of the freaking goods in America and across the world. China, Vietnam, all over Asia. So their people come over here, they don't get, trampled by the cops because they produce something. They bring about, not that Black people can't. Obviously, there's certain reasons why and certain things that are in place, but those would be the things that I'd be looking for. But this is most definitely a good conversation, man. I think it's a very intellectual conversation. I think there's a lot of really good, points and different perspectives, man. Any last thoughts, brothers, before we close out?
Yeah, let me just say this. I think I would like the world to understand, like, just because we're able to sit here and calmly articulate certain things does not mean that we're not pissed off, does not mean that we're not angry, does not mean that we're not sad, does not mean that we're okay with what's going on. It just means that we are capable and willing to have a conversation with other individuals. I'll use the term like-minded, but I don't want to use that term because we're not all like-minded. We don't all have the same exact ideas and values. We come from different places. We have different thoughts, but we also all recognize that a conversation and an opportunity to learn from one another and to get some knowledge from one another and grow because of the insights of the other people on this as part of this conversation and moving forward does not mean that we're not looking to demand solution. It is also, but what we are saying is beyond a solution for tomorrow, we're looking for a solution for long term, and we're looking to continue to have solution-based thought processes. And so just because there wasn't a bunch of cussing and fussing and saying we're going to throw whatever through a business window does not mean that we're not pissed off. And I just want to make sure that we articulate that the right way.
And Reggie, I appreciate that, because I see it being pretty easy for anyone to kind of hear us and think that we don't feel the same things that everyone else is feeling just because it's not coming out in such an angry way. Over the past couple of years, I started to develop what people would call probably fairly radical opinions about really what we could do as Black people that would ultimately benefit us. And the things that would have to happen, I kind of find a little bit unrealistic. But for us to leave in numbers and go somewhere else where we matter is also just as unrealistic. I would just hope that while we are here, that as many Black people as possible can start thinking more than just feeling. So we feel, we hurt, we have to think, and we have to think from a perspective of deficit. We've never been in the same place. We've never been on the same level. We never have, despite how far we have come. And we just have to keep our approach and our mentality for all of us. One, not being selfish. We're good at that. We're really good at being selfish. It's always about me and mines. If we can start thinking more about everyone else, I think that individually we all benefit. And just be smarter about really what we do. I think at some point we do come up with some really actionable ideas that absolutely make sense, where the next move is not like the last. Dweezy.
Well, one thing I want to say, if everybody that's listening past this word to anybody, please, if we come together, let's stop. One thing I want us to do is stop the looting. Because we're looting, because that's not making us no better than what they are. Because you basically stealing from the people that need jobs in your community. You're hurting the people in your community, especially tearing down stuff that's in your community. Businesses. Let's come together and do something positive. Like right now, everything is being paying attention to. Prime example, young lady, Lexington, South Carolina, at a hospital. She got fired because she posted something on Facebook dealing with the N-word. They fired her. The mayor down in Petal, Mississippi, he's getting backlash because of what he said online. So everything is being paying attention to, but we just cannot let the ball drop because they promise us something right now. If they promise us something tomorrow, we like, oh, we got what we want. We don't need to stop there. We got to keep going.
Yeah, man. I'll say this, man, to kind of close out, just with everything that's been going on out in the streets, man, and in the country, man. I think that it looks like they Wi-Fi cut out. Everything that's been going on in the streets, everything that's been going on in the country at this time, man, it's been a lot. It's been a lot on everybody, and I think just overall, I tell people to, help out your fellow Black brother, Black sister, man. Help out the people in your community. I think that, for us as a community, it's important to just rally around each other. And don't let this time, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but there's a lot of positivity that's out in the streets, man. Majority of what's going on out in the streets that's not being actually covered, because obviously people love seeing a car crash. That's just the society we live in. So we love seeing, people love seeing, the chaos and dysfunction, which, it's entertaining, I guess, for some people to see it. But at the same time, man, there's a lot of really good, beautiful things that's happening out there. Let's keep that energy alive in regards to the positivity. Utilize this time as a time to connect with fellow Black people. Start working together. Let's not let the energy be used at this time and then we forget about it, man. That's why I keep talking, like me and the brothers, we're talking about, starting a program, man, a mentorship program for the young boys, Black boys, young men in the Charlotte area. So we're working on that because it's important, especially in the time right now to, get things going, man, and reach out and develop actual plans and things that are going to bring the change you want to see. We don't have to wait for anybody to change anything for us, Black people. We don't, man. We can do it on our own, man. We've done a lot of things on our own without the help of, any politician, governor, government, whatever. We got everything we need to make things happen. So I appreciate y'all fellas being on here.
Yeah, that's what's up.
When these times, it's good to have Black brothers come together and, constructively about things that are going to help our community.
One thing, John, this is what I want. I want somebody to make me a shirt that said, I just want to live. The young man that sung that song, that song speaks a lot. I feel like if anybody know who can make the shirts, I know Kenny does shirts, but I want a shirt. I just want to live. I feel like that speaks a lot. dealing with the situation that's going on.
Appreciate
That's
it.
basically.
So God bless everybody, man. God bless everybody out there. Man, yeah, we'll be back soon. Appreciate y'all.
No
Yo.
doubt.